Coffee cultivation in Colombia represents the second largest foreign exchange generator for the country. Therefore, any problem that affects it continues to be of special importance for the Colombian economy. The coffee ecosystem has been characterized by the good management it has received, which has allowed the preservation of renewable resources, the protection of biodiversity, and the maintenance of the biological balance by not using insecticides in an irrational manner. The coffee berry borer, introduced in Colombia in 1988, is the most important pest that affects coffee in Colombia, causing damage by attacking the cherry, causing the total loss of the bean and in many cases the premature fall of the fruit, as well as reducing the quality of the final product. Here we carry out CCB control and integrated CBB management, what we call M&B. What do? We do a cultural control, biological control, and if necessary, we do a chemical control, if necessary. What do we do first? In the lot we evaluate the production and see how green coffee is after 60 to 70 days of flowering. The literature says, and the Federation of Coffee Growers says that, between 120 and 180 days, we do not go that far because after 60 days we are evaluating. We make percentages of CBB infestation and in these if it is above 2 or 3% in the field. We look at what measures we start to do, that would be the first thing. Regarding cultural control, every 15 or 20 days we religiously do the RIRI, which is to collect the coffee. Every 20 days what is harvested and is ripe, evaluating the percentages of borers. We guarantee with the RIRI that we have 80% of the CBB with our hands, and after that coffee, we will enter in terms of good practices. We collect the coffee and we close the bags tightly closed so that the CBB does not get out of there. Then, in the mill, we process the coffee and in the mill we use a plastic impregnated with honey in the hopper to cover the coffee that arrives from the lots to the weighing ponds so that it does not get covered. Nor will the coffee berry borer return to the lot or cause what is called reinfestation. In the mill, we carry out a very important control based on looking at the coffees that arrive broiled for chairs and currants. We bag them, we leave them in bags for 2 days, 24 hours or 48 hours depending on the weather, and we leave them closed. There we try to control the borer, suffocating it by heat or temperature inside those baskets or plastic bags so that the borer does not return to the lots. This would be like a cultural control. Coffee cultivation in Colombia has remained free of insect problems throughout its development as a commercial exploitation. Only sporadic attacks of insects and mites have been registered, which never became serious pests due to the stability of the coffee ecosystem with its rich diversity, which offers the development of beneficial fauna and maintains the balance between species. On the other hand, in coffee-growing areas insecticides have not been used indiscriminately, to the point that Colombia is the only country in the world in which coffee growing was managed until the arrival of the CBB with very little or almost no use of insecticides. Within the biological control that we use here is the fungus Boviria bachiana in many presentations and commercial cases that according to the number of spores comes the concentration and the value that brings the product. We use Boveria bachiana here to fumigate depending on the percentage of CBB infestation, and it has given us very good results because it is part of integrated control and management. That is what we do: cultural control, biological control, and finally, if necessary, chemical control. This biological control is very important because we are not using chemical products directly on the crop, and the most important thing is that it can control, as we have determined here on the farm, more than 30% to 40% of the CBB infestation in the grains. It simply plugs the fungus and the entrance of the CBB. The CBB parasitizes it, and when it suddenly flies out, it makes it reach another grain with the fungus, and the parasite ends so that it does not leave those grains or infest other crops again. We perform chemical control depending on the percentage of infestation, because we determine in which position the CBB is. There are 4 positions for the CBB: A, B, C and D. If they are A and B and the percentage that we do in the field is above 2% or 5% in the field, we determine if there is a need to apply a chemical or not, an insecticide. Within the chemical control, we determine here in the farm why there is a critical period. This can be between 120 and 180 days after the coffee has flowered, so there can be a critical period that we determine by carrying out the infestation percentages. If it is necessary to apply chemical products, here we use products based on chlorpyrifos. There are many active ingredients and commercial products that we would have to delve more directly into. But here we have used chlorpyrifos as an active ingredient during critical periods and seasons, always looking at the position of the CBB, position A or B. If the 50% infestation is above 2%, which we have already talked about, that is where you can end up in a grain where the CBB is inside. If the CBB is in position A or B, this is when it is just entering the bean. If it is just entering the bean, it is a very good period for us to apply a chemical product. If the CBB is already inside the bean, there is really not much to do, and then we refer to cultural control, which is when we harvest the coffee and try to recover at least one kernel in the mill. But chemical control, if and when it should be done, is if the percentages of research are above 2% in the farm and if they are in position A or B to be able to apply it. If they are in C or B, we don't really apply any product, or we suddenly reapply a biological because it makes the fungus plug the entrance of the fungus, parasitize it and prevent it from infesting us again. Coffee rust, first observed in Colombia in 1983, causes losses between 23% and 50% of the quality and quantity of coffee production in susceptible varieties that do not have a timely and adequate management of the disease in an accumulated cycle of 4 harvests. Rust is a disease linked to the physiological development of the crop, the production level of the plant and the variability of environmental conditions. For a rust epidemic to occur, it requires a susceptible plant, a pathogenic organism, favorable climatic conditions and poor or inappropriate agronomic management practices. We also carry out an integrated management of rust, but it must be clarified that the best integrated management is to have resistant varieties. The National Federation of Coffee Growers, through Senecaf, its research center, has developed multiple rust-resistant varieties. Coffee rust is one of the most limiting diseases in the crop. Here in Colombia obviously there are still varieties that are susceptible to it. What produces it? The fungus Hemilia vastatrix. What does the proliferation of the fungus depend on? Some factors such as climate, temperature, shade, age of the crop, agronomic management and the variety at this moment. As for rust management, we also carry out an integrated management of the disease by going to the lots and determining the percentage of infection of the fungus, as long as the lots are susceptible to this disease. Here we have almost all the resistant varieties, but in terms of rust management we do it depending on what the Federation calls by calendar type. That is to say that here in these areas of southwest Antioquia the harvest is in the second half of the year. As it is in the second semester, then we have defined according to Senecaf some application calendars for the disease, to be preventive and curative. In mid-May we make the first application for rust, obviously taking into account the percentages of infection of the fungus. If the percentages are really minimal, we do not apply any type of fungicide, which is the product used to prevent or control this disease. So we have already said that in the first 15 days of May, in the second half of June we make the second application, and finally, in the 15 days of August the third application if it is warranted according to the percentages of infection of the fungus. In this way we make a control based on percentages, so that we do not have to apply, if it is not necessary, chemicals that go against the quality of the product and suddenly against the health of the people who work in the field.
Nuestra tierra, nuestro agro.